to get this together, to do a little reminder research, and to refresh myself, because I was a Superior Court judge in New Jersey for 15 years. And although I sat in 3 counties and I sat in all courts as a Superior Court judge, as a civil Superior Court judge, I had the duty of hearing appeals of denials of gun permits. And my experience in doing that over 15 years was so different from what I read now. This was the years from 1992 to 2007. That's when I sat as a judge. That I was curious as to why it seemed to be, or how it seemed to be a different world. And what I found was that what my experience was in New Jersey, in order to obtain a license to possess or carry a handgun, particularly as a concealed handgun, you had to show a compelling reason for doing that, or else your application was denied. And once denied, you couldn't lawfully carry a handgun or possess it or purchase it. So like other Superior Court judges, I spent a great deal of time, many times, hearing these appeals from the denials of gun permits. And my experience was you had to have a positive reason to have a handgun. And typically, it would be as in your employment as a private security guard. And of course, if you were employed by a recognized security firm and you had all of the safety instruction, then it was needed for your employment, and it was legitimate, and it would be granted. But the majority of applications to purchase or possess or carry a handgun were denied. And throughout all that period, of course, that was the law in New Jersey. And it was also not contradicted by the US Supreme Court. So remembering that and seeing how different the experience of all the states in the United States are now, I decided to do some research about it. And I'm going to get rid of something that's blocking me, but hopefully not you. Okay. And so what I found was that, and incidentally, you all know the basic facts about how handguns and other handguns have proliferated in our country. According to the Small Arms Survey based in Switzerland, the US has almost twice the number of guns as any other country. And it has, at that time in 2019, it was approximated that there were 120 guns for every 100 residents, more guns than population in the US. And the US at the time of this survey, and probably today, is the only country that has as many or more guns than it does residents. No other country in the world has that situation. And according to a Gallup survey, 44% of US adults live in a household with a gun. 44%. Now, the United States in that year, 2019, had about 4% of the world's population. But it had 44% of persons living in a household with a gun. And it also had 44%. It had, again, 4% of the population lives in the United States, roughly. But 44% of suicides by gunshots in the world are in the United States. The United States had 44% of suicides by gunshot in the United States, although only possessing 4% of the world's population. Now, and we know that the use of semi-automatic rifles, the AR-15 and the like, have not only frequently been used in mass shootings, but some statistics say they are among the most favorite long guns currently in the United States. The semi-automatic rifles, similar to the AR-15, which, as you all know, were developed for use by the military in wartime. Now, in that regard, federal law from 1994 to 2004 banned the possession of AR-15s or semi-automatic rifles. But in 2004, that federal law expired, was not renewed, and there is now no federal law banning military-style rifles. Now, the U.S., what's the history of gun control in the United States? The U.S. Congress, as well as state legislatures, do have the authority to enact gun control legislation and have done so. In 1968, for example, the Federal Gun Control Act of that year does prohibit persons under 18 years of age, not 21, but 18 years of age, from purchasing firearms, and also prohibited, in addition to juveniles, are mentally disabled or dishonorably discharged military personnel. That's the 1968 Federal Gun Control Act. It doesn't do a great deal to control gun possession, because it only controls purchase from a federal recognized retailer. Now, in addition to the 1968 law prohibiting juveniles or certain other persons from possessing firearms. In 1992, you will remember when I tell you about this, the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act was enacted by Congress. That was at the time of the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, which you'll remember the White House staffer Brady was severely injured and in fact lifetime affecting injuries, and the Gun Control Act of 1992 was named after him. It didn't happen at the time, but it happened eventually. Now that requires background checks for unlicensed individuals purchasing a firearm, again, from a federally authorized dealer. That's all it does. It requires a background check, but only if you're purchasing from a legitimate retailer. Now, before that, before 1968 and 1992, there was major congressional legislation relating to gun control, and that was the National Firearms Act of 1934. And it required the registration of certain firearms and restricted the sale and ownership of high-risk weapons, such as machine guns and semi-automatic automatic rifles. Now, the reason why that 1934 National Firearms Act is important is because it was followed in 1939 by a Supreme Court decision, a US Supreme Court decision, which was named the United States versus Miller. That decision upheld the 1934 congressional law, and it determined that the constitutional right to bear arms applies only to citizens in state guards or other military units and not to private citizens. In other words, there was no, by the 1939 Supreme Court decision of Miller, there was no constitutional right to bear arms by individual citizens, and that decision so held. Now, the Second Amendment to the US Constitution says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, that 1939 Supreme Court case said that only applies to the right of states to have armed militias and does not apply to individuals who might wish to possess a gun. However, and that was still the law of the Supreme Court decision all through my tenure as a judge in New Jersey, 1992 to 2007. And it was also the law in New Jersey, as I have just explained to you, that you had to possess a demonstrable reason to possess a gun other than a hunting rifle, which most people could not demonstrate. Now, however, 1 year after I retired, in 2008, there was a very important U.S. Supreme Court decision, which I have always disliked. It's the District of Columbia versus Heller. And Justice Scalia, Antonin Scalia, wrote the court's opinion, which was, and he was joined by Justice Roberts and Justice Thomas and a couple of others. He wrote that Washington, D.C.'s law banning handguns in the home or carried elsewhere, and that was the law in the District of Columbia in answer to in reaction to increasing gun violence. The Supreme Court said that that law did violate the Second Amendment. And Justice Scalia's opinion said that all citizens, not just militia unit members, have a constitutional right to carry weapons and thereby effectively reversing the 1939 ruling, which was in effect during my entire time as an active judge. That was a sea change, and that really opened floodgates. Now, the Supreme Court did not ban altogether states' rights to have laws regulating gun possession and use. And since that decision in 2008, there have been a bewildering number of court cases, both allowing and also striking down various laws that were attempts by legislatures, state legislatures, to control the public's possession and carrying of firearms and handguns in public. Now, at present, for example, in Pennsylvania, a person must be 21 years of age to obtain a license to carry a concealed handgun. But there is no provision in Pennsylvania for turning down that permit unless the person is in a certain restricted category, such as a convicted felon and some other categories. Now, openly carry, the reason why this whole subject is confusing is because there are certain permits required to carry a concealed handgun that's not in view. But for example, in Pennsylvania, there's no license required if you're over 21 to carry openly a handgun. However, in the city of Philadelphia, a license is required, unlike the remainder of Pennsylvania, to either openly carry a handgun or to concealed carry a handgun on either public streets or public property. You can possess it in your home without having a license, but you can't carry it on the street or in any public property unless you have a license to do so. But that's only in Philadelphia and not the remainder of Pennsylvania. So therefore, of course, as we know, confusion reigns. Now, there are there's a new law that has been enacted recently in New Jersey and in some other states, because in 2022, there was another U.S. Supreme Court decision, and that was a ruling that the New York State's gun law, which requires showing a legitimate reason to carry a handgun, is unconstitutional. Now that is what so that 2022 decision of the Supreme Court, authored by Clarence Thomas, struck down New Jersey's law, which I enforced during my time, and it struck down New York's law that had the same provision that you had to show a justifiable reason to obtain a gun permit, and some other states. So that was just in 2022, and that caused New Jersey, New York, and several other states to hurriedly change their laws in recognition that the Supreme Court, as in Justice Thomas's case in 2022, said you cannot require a justifiable reason to obtain a permit. And that case was called New York versus Bowen. And so now New Jersey has amended its law, eliminating the justifiable reason requirement. Now, however, New Jersey, as New York and a number of other states, have tried to comply with that Supreme Court decision and still restrict gun possession. And the way New Jersey and these other courts have done it is to prohibit carrying firearms in places like schools, parks, bars, courthouses, and other places like that, and also to require the taking of safety courses and carrying insurance if you obtain a permit to carry a weapon or possess a weapon like a handgun. Now, those new laws, which are mostly in 2023, have again already been attacked in the federal courts. And although those decisions have not been reached yet, there's an ongoing attack and litigation regarding all of these laws. Now, I mentioned that the federal government did have, between the years 2004 and 2011, a federal law banning assault rifles or semi-automatic rifles. But that law expired in 2004, and there's now no federal law which prohibits it. So, of course, consequently, we have all of the use of guns that we see today. Now, I want to talk about how the U.S. compares. So I've given you a little history of the confusion in the law about and the attempts of the states, and I'll say a little bit more about the states who are attempting to control gun possession while at the same time complying with the U.S. Supreme Court. I'll have a little bit more to say about that. But as a result of what I've told you, the U.S. is called permissive, possessing permissive gun laws. As a result of these Supreme Court cases, you don't have to show a justifiable reason to possess, to purchase or possess or carry a handgun or a similar gun. Now, there are in these countries, in the world, according to the World Population Review, 15 countries like the United States where it's permissive to have, possess and obtain and carry a gun. Now, there are only two such countries in Europe. One is Australia, and one is Albania. They're the only two countries in Europe that now have the same permissive gun laws that the U.S. Supreme Court has required to be in all 50 states in the United States. Now, there are, in all of the Americas, North and South and Central America, there are only two countries with permissive gun laws. One, of course, is now the United States, and the other is Honduras. They are the other, only that other country is in all of the Americas that has our similar permissive gun laws. Now, the remaining, there are a total, as I said, of 15 countries throughout the world. And the Middle East has one country with a permissive gun law, and that's Yemen. And the rest are in Asia, Africa, or pretty much that. Now, there are 7 countries which still have gun laws like was previously attempted in New York and New Jersey. And that is, you had to show a particular need for purchasing, possessing, and carrying a gun like a handgun. Spain, Germany, and Czech Republic have those kinds of laws at present. You must show a justifiable reason to purchase, possess, or carry a handgun. And in the Americas, Canada and Argentina have those laws where you can get a gun permit if you show a justifiable reason. And Thailand and Turkey in Eurasia and Asia have that type of gun law as well. And in the United Kingdom, all handguns having ammunition cartridges other than hunting handguns also have to be issued only on a justifiable reason. Now, in 13 countries of the world, there are strict gun controls laws. That is, it is difficult or impossible for citizens to legally possess a gun, except for police and military. For example, in Europe, Greece, Cyprus, Hungary, Ireland, and the Netherlands have such laws where it is very difficult, nearly impossible, to obtain permission to purchase or carry a handgun or the like. In Asia, for example, China, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, North and South Korea, and Vietnam also have strict gun control laws where it is difficult and nearly impossible to obtain permission to carry a gun. And in the Middle East, the Kuwait also falls in this category. And so as you see throughout the world, there are many countries that have completely different approaches to controlling guns than the United States. Now, back in the U.S., there are certain states that I must mention that have made a valiant attempt to control the possession of guns and yet comply with the U.S. Supreme Court's rulings. For example, California, as well as New York, as I've mentioned, and New Jersey, and Hawaii have done that in ways that I started to describe. They have they've removed the justifiable reason, but they have added to the list of locations where a gun may not be carried. And they've also added restrictions such as gun safety courses and the like. Now, the Giffords Law Center has data on this, and you remember Congressman Giffords has long been an advocate for control of guns ever since she was severely, irreparably injured in a shootout. Now, her center ranks California, which makes a valiant attempt to both comply with the Supreme Court and also control guns. And her center rates it #1 for gun safety, California. Now, her center says that what that means is that California has a 37% lower gun death rate than the national average. And Hawaii has similar laws to California, in which they really try to restrict it as best they can under the new Supreme Court laws. And interestingly, the governor of Hawaii is a physician. And so he's been really enacting or promulgating new legislation as soon as the U.S. Supreme Court loosens the standards to try to keep control over that. And incidentally, what he has said online is that he's trying to recognize people's belief that they need those people believe believe they need a gun for self-protection, with the balanced against the need to control the guns that are available in the population. And so there's more of a nuanced legislation popping up in states all the time to try to do that. Now, the worst state, I have to say, according to these data that I've consulted, like the Giffords Law Center, is Mississippi. Since 2016, individuals in Mississippi may carry a loaded, hidden handgun without obtaining a permit, except for certain small category of people, such as convicted felons and such as that. They do there is a requirement in Mississippi that the carrier of a handgun be 21 years of age, but there's no requirement for a permit. And if you do have a permit in Mississippi, you may carry a concealed handgun in places like schools, government buildings, bars, and churches. And the Mississippi justification is that permit to carry in those places requires the completion of safety permits, safety courses. But once you have a permit, you can even carry a hidden handgun in places like I just named, bars, schools, government buildings, churches. So there is a remarkable difference between states like Mississippi and other states. Now, Mississippi, according to the Gifford Law Center, has the worst record for gun deaths per population, the worst rate. So, you know, before I leave the subject of Mississippi, when I downloaded the Mississippi law, the comments that followed the publication of the law in this website, the comments were interesting. I want to read you a few that are from Mississippi's citizens. This is a very biased piece that was said that Mississippi had the worst record on gun safety. I suggest you further educate yourself on the subject. They're obviously written by an anti-gun liberal trying to skew public opinion with their biases. This is definitely not a news piece. Then another commenter says, law-abiding citizens should be able to carry anywhere to protect themselves. Now it will even the playing field against the hardened criminals that have death and destruction on their minds. Maybe they'll think twice about such acts in Mississippi. And then finally, someone says, this article should have been under an editorial section since it is nothing but an opinion piece. So that is the extent of my findings. And I realize that it's a confused description because it's a confused subject, but I think I have shown how the U.S. Differs from the United States, but from the rest of the world, from many places in the world, which have totally different approaches. And incidentally, Lois asked me before you all joined if I had an opinion. I have always been very strongly disapproving of Justice Scalia's opinion in 2008 that the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, applies to private citizens and all residents. I think the 1939 Supreme Court decision that the Second Amendment applies only to the militias and the military and the police, I think that is the correct one. Any questions?
Tom,
Yes.
On that topic of ruling on whether it's constitutional or not, is there a chance that a new court someday in the future would revert back to a more restricted view of the Constitution on this to change the environment we're in?
Well, I think that for example, 30 years from now or 50 years from now, you know, if the world still exists and the U.S. still exists, the membership on the Supreme Court will long ago have changed, and public opinion will have rolled along, and so I do think that it could change. It could.
You know, I've been to a number of Mums Demand Action meetings, and we've been talking about gun control in Amnesty International, and I had no idea of that timeline. I mean, that was just so simple. So 1939 and 2008. I didn't realize that that's what happened. So 2008, we had the election that that Obama won.
Yeah.
Gee.
And it was a different world when I sat on the bench, because all the Superior Court judges in New Jersey thought they were doing their duty when they turned down the appeals attempting to get gun permits. And the New Jersey Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court agreed until 2008.
Yeah.
But what interests me particularly is how the rest of the countries of the world handle it.
Yeah, yeah.
And they obviously handle it very different. We're in a very small minority.
Yeah, yeah.
And think of that in the Americas, North, Central, and South America, the only countries with permissive gun laws, mandatory permissive gun laws, are the U.S. and Honduras.
One thing I'm not understanding is how the federal law can blow up state law. because I know that the state laws for guns are different in every state, and the state laws in New Jersey are probably the most.
Well, incidentally, that it's interesting that you raise that, because on the one hand, the magic term is unconstitutional, and as you know, from ever since the first Chief Justice, the U.S. Supreme Court can knock out state laws by declaring them unconstitutional, and the Chief Justice Marshall established that in the 18th century. So that's one thing. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that the Congress could also enact federal laws, and in which those laws, for example, permitting guns, because right now there is almost no congressional law, as I said. Right. Now the Congress can enact a law controlling the purchase, permit, and carrying of guns, and supersede the state's laws, but it hasn't done it. But it could, and you know, the result is all of this confusion, and a lot of the mishandling of government and the confusion in government results from inaction. And in this case, it's the inaction of Congress, because Congress could straighten this all out if they wanted.
But of course, we have a very powerful gun law.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some kind of reckless pioneer spirit that Americans seem to have. And, you know, in addition, we've got the gun industry, which is very appreciative of the gun lobby. And it's all tangled up with a certain amount of financing and, you know, what the constituents want. You know, there are all these facts.
And also, public opinion is often influenced by fear, and there's widespread fear among citizens that is either sometimes justified but often unjustified. And fear creates public opinion, and public opinion either creates laws or bars laws. So fear is an enormous factor, and it's at a very high, this is just a philosophical view, it's at a very high level now. Mm. So it influences public opinion.
Mm. And of course, it's all tangled up, isn't it, in every aspect. So, you know, the social and economic injustice, you know, as that grows, as the disparity in income grows, as all of these, I mean, people are getting, you know, more emotional. And so you either, as you say, on the one hand, some people feel increasingly fearful. And on the other hand, you know, if you read a lot of articles, you know, they will often say that the worst of this happens in, you know, inner city, you know, Black and brown. And so, well, you know, I don't need to be part of that. It's, as you say, it's complicated.
But tellingly, many children are are harmed or killed by gunshot by accidents because there's a gun in the house.
Mhm. Or a drive-by shooting, or the horrible things we've heard about lately, people pulling up in the wrong driveway and,
Right. Yeah.
you know,
Ringing the wrong doorbell.
ringing the wrong.
That's what I mean by fear and how that drives wrong action.
Yeah.
And wrong opinions and wrong laws.
Mhm. Right.
But Tom, given our current Supreme Court, even if our Congress were to pass a more restrictive gun law, wouldn't our current Supreme Court trash it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, in reading through this material, I have to laud the states of California, Hawaii, New York, and New Jersey, because given that the Supreme Court is going to have the final say here, there is a great deal of difference between the new laws in those states and laws in other states. And there's also a great deal of difference in enforcing them. So that even with the present Supreme Court, there's much that could be done in the way of controlling guns, even under the present Supreme Court. And Hawaii, California, New York State, and New Jersey have demonstrated that. She's muted. I think she's talking.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I may have misunderstood this, but I think you alluded to the fact that lawsuits were being brought against the laws in New Jersey, New York.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, so there could be, I mean, their laws might need to be shut down as a result.
Yeah, it's a rapidly changing landscape. It's you hardly know what the state is at any given day, because then there will be another federal decision. The prospects are not good right now. But you know, I'm by nature an optimist, and the human race finds solutions to its problems, no matter how deep the morass.
Hi, this is John. Tom, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I was speaking over somebody earlier. I do apologize if I was. One of the things I've seen since the pandemic and Black Lives Matter, with the protests and things like that, I have seen 3 of my friends go out and get guns. And I'm wondering if, the fear factor has probably heightened significantly since there's incidents of the pandemic and Black Lives Matter and all the other cultural problems that we've been having.
Yeah, and I don't foresee a near future when people will not, when a great many people will not feel the need to possess a gun, a handgun. I don't foresee that in the near future. And, you know, they're residents and they're citizens and they're neighbors of yours and mine and they're voters and so forth and so on. So they will have their say. And that's why I applaud the governors of New Jersey, Hawaii, and California, and New York, who try to recognize that and yet obtain some control over the proliferation of guns nevertheless.
Thank you.
Lois, it's 8 o'clock. Is you know, I'm a real time freak, as you may have learned over these last few years. I've used up my time.
But we can run over if there are more questions or comments.
Any others?
I thought that was a terrific talk. Thank you so much. I mean, you've totally depressed me, but at least I know what the issues are now, which is, that's really helpful knowing what the laws are. Thank you so much for that. It was really, really enlightening. You know?
Yes, thank you, Tom. Very enlightening.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I thank you all for listening, and I think we'll have some more listeners if since Lois gets it on YouTube.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much, Tom. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.